Right, hello there, Year 9, and welcome back to our final revision session of the year. Yesterday we were looking at the photosynthesis section of bioenergetics. Today we're going to be finishing off on the respiration section. So we're going to be having a look at aerobic and anaerobic respiration, the response to exercise on the body, and metabolism. As we go through these sections, like with yesterday's ones, feel free to make whatever revision notes you prefer, so mind maps, revision cards if you have cards, or just simply notes in your book is absolutely fine. Tomorrow I'll be setting some exam-style questions on the bioenergetics section, and then for the last two lessons of the year, we'll be going over the answers to them. Okay, so we're going to start off with aerobic respiration. And there's two types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Respiration will sometimes be referred to as cellular respiration because it is happening inside the cells, and it's happening in the mitochondria of the cells. Every living cell needs energy, so all types of cells will respire, be it animal cells, plant cells, bacterial cells, all of them will require energy to survive. Now, photosynthesis was a good example of an endothermic reaction, and respiration is a really good example of an exothermic reaction. Now, in an endothermic reaction, energy is taken in. In an exothermic reaction, energy is given off. Now, that's the whole purpose of respiration, to give off energy. So it's a good one to remember as an example of exothermic reactions for chemistry. Now, some of the energy is used inside the cells, and some of it is transferred out of the cells to be used in other parts of the body or whatever organism it is. It's happening all of the time inside your body, whether you're asleep or whether you're awake, because everything requires energy, even sleeping. An organism will receive all the energy it needs through respiration. So it's a very, very important reaction that is happening inside all of our cells. So if you'd like to pause the video now, and if we get down what respiration is, the type of reaction it is, and also where it is happening. Okay, so why do organisms need energy to survive? Some organisms use it to keep warm. So if organisms are warm-blooded, then they'll be using the energy from respiration to stay warm. So that includes birds and mammals. Energy is also needed for chemical reactions. So if we're taking small molecules like amino acids and building them up into things like proteins, then that will require energy. The same as if we're taking glucose and converting it to glycogen, or if we're taking fatty acids and glycerol and converting it into fats. We also need respiration for movement. So the muscle cells in our muscle tissues will use the energy in order to contract, and that's what enables us to move. Okay, so I suggest we now put down the uses of energy from respiration. Right, so we'll move on to the next section, and I do realise that you might hear some chewing sounds in the background. I do apologise, that is my dog chewing on a chew at the moment, so please ignore that. So we're going to have a look now at the actual chemical reaction of aerobic respiration. Now, if you remember the photosynthesis one, it's quite straightforward because it's just the opposite to photosynthesis. So in aerobic respiration, which uses oxygen, that is the difference between anaerobic and aerobic respiration. Aerobic uses oxygen. The word equation will be glucose plus oxygen makes carbon dioxide plus water. Sometimes you'll also see plus energy at the end, Energy isn't a physical thing, so it doesn't always have to go in the equation, but just be aware that sometimes you might see it plus energy as well. Now, like with the photosynthesis equation, the symbol equation is the reverse. So glucose is C6H12O6, oxygen is O2, and that makes carbon dioxide, which is CO2, and water, which is H2O. And to balance it out, we have the sixes again, the sign of the devil, 666, on everything apart from the glucose, which already has sixes on it. We need to be able to know, no matter whether you do foundation or higher, what the formula is for glucose, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water. I think most of you will already know the oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water. It will be the glucose that will be new in this section. Now, aerobic respiration, as I've already said, occurs in the mitochondria of the cell. So plant cells and animal cells contain mitochondria, and this is where respiration is happening. Because we're reacting the glucose with oxygen, we say that it is being oxidized. So again, this is a good link to chemistry and oxidation reactions, where oxygen is being added to a molecule. It's reacting with oxygen. Now, aerobic respiration releases a large amount of energy from every glucose molecule. This is different in anaerobic respiration, where there'll be a lot less energy being produced for every glucose molecule. At the bottom, we can see an electron micrograph. So this is taken using an electron microscope, which can see much smaller objects. It's got much higher magnification and resolution. And we can see that it's the same in plant cells and animal cells. So if you could put down the word and symbol equations, and there's an oxidation reaction, and it provides lots of energy, and that these are all to do with aerobic respiration. Okay, we'll move on to this one then. So now we're going to be looking at anaerobic respiration. And the difference between anaerobic and aerobic respiration, which I've already said, is whether it uses oxygen. And anaerobic respiration does not use oxygen. And this will normally occur during hard exercise. So if you are doing sprints, short, hard amounts of exercise, then your body will convert, it will switch over to anaerobic respiration. And that's because they're not getting enough oxygen. So the blood can't be pumped quick enough to provide the oxygen during hard exercise. So the body has to respire anaerobically instead. Now, in anaerobic respiration, glucose isn't broken down into carbon dioxide and water, so less energy is transferred. What actually happens is the glucose molecule basically splits in half and forms a substance called lactic acid. And lactic acid will start building up in the muscle cells. So it's not like carbon dioxide and water, which are taken away by the blood. That lactic acid will start building up inside the muscles. Now, the only way to get rid of lactic acid is to combine it with oxygen, and that will convert it into carbon dioxide. As it's building up, it's kind of like a debt. So if you're borrowing money, eventually you're going to have to pay that back. So we call it an oxygen debt. So the amount of oxygen needed to get rid of that lactic acid that is building up in the muscles. The more lactic acid, the bigger the oxygen debt, because you need more oxygen. Now, if you are building up this lactic acid in your muscles, it will often cause fatigue in your muscles. Because it's not good for the muscles, it makes them tired and they cannot contract as well as they could. So if we could pause the video now and put down about anaerobic respiration. So what is anaerobic respiration? The word equation for anaerobic respiration, you don't need to know the symbol equation. And what the issues are with the buildup of lactic acid. Okay, now the making the lactic acid from glucose is what happens in animals. It's slightly different in plant and yeast cells. In plant and yeast cells, if they respire anaerobically, the glucose is broken down into two products, and those two products are ethanol and carbon dioxide. Now, the reaction of glucose to make ethanol and carbon dioxide is known as fermentation, and it's a very important reaction because it's used in a couple of industries, big industries, including making alcohol. So the ethanol is used to put into alcoholic drinks, and also it's used to make bread. So the carbon dioxide formed makes those little air pockets in the bread to make it nice and fluffy. So if we could put down about anaerobic respiration in plant and yeasts, we need to know the word equation. We need to know that it's called fermentation for yeast, and that we use it in making alcoholic drinks and bread. Okay, so we've got here a little summary of all of the parts that we've just spoken about. So you can see in the columns, we've got the different types of respiration, so aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration in animal cells, and anaerobic respiration in plant and yeast cells. Going along the rows, we've got whether it uses oxygen, what the end products are, so what it makes, whether it's complete or incomplete oxidation of the glucose, and whether it efficiently transfers energy. So does it make a lot of energy or not very much energy? So going through, we can see the basics of what we need to know for all of the types of respiration. So aerobic respiration needs oxygen, makes carbon dioxide and water, is complete oxidation, and produces a lot of energy. In anaerobic respiration in animal cells, it doesn't use oxygen. The products are lactic acid, is incomplete oxidation, so only provides a small amount of energy. And in anaerobic respiration in plant and yeast cells, oxygen again is not used, but this time it makes ethanol and carbon dioxide. It's still incomplete oxidation of glucose, so again only produces a small amount of energy. Right, moving on now, and we're going to be looking at the response to the body of exercise. So during exercise, the human body reacts so that it can provide the reactants needed to make enough energy. As we've said before, if there's not enough oxygen, then the muscle cells will respire anaerobically instead. Now, if you are exercising, be it hard exercise or lighter exercise or moderate exercise, it will cause your heart rate to increase. And the reason why your heart rate increases is because it can pump oxygenated blood faster to the muscle cells. So you get more blood to the muscles, which means there'll be more oxygen. Now, in order to get enough oxygen into that blood, our breathing rate also increases. And also the breathing volume. So that's how much air you take into your lungs with each breath. So you breathe deeper and you breathe more often. And this increases the amount of oxygen entering the bloodstream. So if we can have about response to exercise, what happens to our body when we exercise, and why that happens. Okay, so we're going to have a look now at what happens after exercise. So if you have done a sprint, for instance, that would be hard exercise. You've built up that lactic acid. So in this section, we're looking at what happens to get rid of it. So lactic acid builds up in the muscles during exercise. Blood flows through the muscle cells and takes the lactic acid to the liver. The liver oxidizes the lactic acid, so reacts it with oxygen, and converts it back into glucose. We can then use that glucose to respire aerobically, or it can be converted into glycogen if it's not needed and stored away in the liver. Now, this is the reason why, after you have done a sprint, your heart rate is still high and why your breathing rate is still high, because you need to get that oxygen into your body to help break that lactic acid into glucose, convert it into glucose, and also to get that oxygen to the liver in order for it to be able to do that. So can we pop down what happens after exercise, after hard exercise, in order to get rid of the lactic acid? Okay, so we're going to finish off with metabolism. And metabolism isn't just about respiration. Metabolism is the sum of all the reactions in a cell or your body. So when people say that you've got a high metabolism, it's often referring to respiration, so burning energy very quickly, but it's not just to do with respiration, it's everything. So as we can see, we've got some different examples of some of those reactions that are happening in your body. So organisms use energy transfer by respiration for the continual enzyme control processes of metabolism. So photosynthesis, respiration, all of those require enzymes and they need energy as well. Plants will need energy in order to take things like glucose and convert them into starch. In humans, it's glucose into glycogen, and other animals will be the same. It's also used in plants to take glucose and nitrate ions to form amino acids, which we looked at in photosynthesis. Those amino acids are then used to make proteins. We also take amino acids from the food that we eat and build up our own proteins, and that will be part of metabolism as well. So a plant, a daffodil, has got a metabolism as well as us having metabolisms. So if you could put down some examples of metabolism and what metabolism actually is, the definition of metabolism. Okay, and we're going to finish off now with just some different metabolic reactions that we've covered in previous topics that we need to know about. So it's a good link between photosynthesis and also digestion when we're looking at metabolism. So conversion of glucose into cellulose in plants, the conversion of glucose to glycogen in animal cells, and we use that glycogen as a storage as we do not have starch, making lipids or fats from glycerol and fatty acids, and also breaking down excess protein to make urea for excretion. And lastly, what the whole this chapter is about, metabolism also is respiration. Respiration is a part of metabolism. So if we could pop down some these types of metabolism, especially if you didn't know about them beforehand, and that will be the last part of the revision section. Okay, so we're going to finish off with some questions about the things that we've covered. So if you cover up your notes, have a fresh piece of paper in front of you, just to have a go at how much you remember. Okay, question number 1. When does respiration occur in cells? Question number 2, you don't need to copy out the whole table, but if you just jot down the 3 types of respiration and what it encompasses, can you complete the information that is missing from the table? So whether oxygen is required, what the end products are, whether it's complete or incomplete oxidation, and whether it's high or low energy levels for the 3 types of respiration. So if you could pause the video and answer those 2 questions, please. Okay, next one. Question 3. Name 3 processes that organisms require energy. So 3 things we use the energy from respiration for. Number 4. What does the chemical formula C6H12O6 represent? Question 5. Write down the word equation for aerobic respiration in a plant cell. Question number 6. Write down the word equation for anaerobic respiration in a yeast cell. Question 7. Why is fermentation of economic, meaning money, economic importance? Question 8. Describe 3 ways in which the body responds to vigorous exercise in order to ensure sufficient oxygen reaches the muscle cells. Question 9. If exercise carries on for a long time, what happens to the muscles? And question 10. Why is respiration described as an exothermic reaction? So pause the video if you need time to complete those, and then we'll move on. Okay, next one, number 11. Copy and complete the table below. So you don't need to do it as a table, you can just list them. So the name of the large molecule, carbohydrate, is made up of the subunit, so the smaller molecules, the subunits, glucose. What are lipids made from? There's 2 things. What are proteins made of? 1 thing, but 2 words. And finally, number 12, what is the definition of metabolism? Okay, so we're going to go through now and answer those questions. So hopefully we managed to remember that information. These are the kinds of things that you're going to be tested on in the exam. So when does respiration occur? A bit of a weird question, but it occurs continuously or all the time, 24 hours a day, anything like that. Question number 2. So we've got the 3 types of respiration and the main points to do with them. So aerobic respiration uses oxygen. Its end products are carbon dioxide and water. It is complete oxidation, and it produces high amounts of energy. Anaerobic respiration does not use oxygen. This is for animal cells, does not use oxygen. The end products are lactic acid. It is incomplete oxidation with low energy transfer. And finally, anaerobic respiration in plants and yeast cells does not require oxygen, but produces ethanol and carbon dioxide. It is incomplete oxidation, and again has low energy transfer. Question 3. 3 processes that organisms require energy for. So you can have keeping warm, movement, and building larger molecules, words to that effect. Number 4, what does the chemical formula C6H12O6 represent? It's glucose. Number 5, write down the word equation for aerobic respiration in a plant cell. Well done if you remember that it is the same plant and animal. It is glucose plus oxygen makes carbon dioxide plus water. And you might have put plus energy as well, that's fine. Number 6, write down the word equation for anaerobic respiration in a yeast cell. That one is glucose makes carbon dioxide and ethanol. If it was an animal cell, it would be glucose makes lactic acid. Number 7, why is fermentation of economic importance? So if you said that it's used to make bread and alcoholic drinks, then that will be the correct answer. Question 8. Describe 3 ways in which the body responds to vigorous exercise in order to ensure sufficient oxygen reaches the muscle cells. So anything about increasing the heart rate, increasing the breathing rate, and increasing the breath volume, so the amount of air taken into the lungs. Number 9. If exercise carries on for a long time, what happens to the muscles? They become fatigued. Question 10. Why is respiration described as an exothermic reaction? Because it gives off energy or transfers energy to the environment. And finally, number 11. Copy and complete the table. So the carbohydrate was already done for you. It's made up of glucose, lipids, glycerol and fatty acids. If you put the numbers, that's fine, but glycerol and fatty acid. And protein is amino acids. And finally, number 12, what is the definition of metabolism? It's the sum of all reactions that occur in a cell or body. Okay, so that's it for our revision of bioenergetics and our revision for this year. So you've done incredibly well on that if you've managed to complete all 3 of the revision sections that we've done: cell biology, organisation, which is quite a big chapter, big section, and now bioenergetics. So apart from the preventing diseases, we managed to go over all of the things that were covered in lockdown. So hopefully that has helped cement that into your memories, ready for next year and year 11. So tomorrow I will be setting some exam style questions like I have on the previous 2. And then the last 2 lessons of the year, we'll be going over those, looking at command words, how to answer the questions, and seeing how you did. So well done, take care of yourself, and you'll hear from me next time. Goodbye.